In his 52 years of life, William Shakespeare transformed himself from the son of a small-town glovemaker to a favorite playwright of Queen Elizabeth and King James. Today, he is celebrated as the most popular writer in the English language. What we know about Shakespeare's life is limited, but how his life experiences influenced his works has been the source of much study and speculation. This video explores some of Shakespeare's works in the context of facts that are known about his life. Shakespeare was born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, a small town in the English countryside. Although there's no record of his schooling, he almost certainly attended the local public school, where he would have studied Latin literature and rhetoric. Shakespeare's plays indicate he was familiar with Greek and Latin. Titus Andronicus, his breakthrough play, borrows plot points from the writers Seneca and Ovid, who may have made a particularly strong impression on him. At age 18, Shakespeare married 26-year-old Anne Hathaway. 6 months later, she gave birth to their daughter. Because of their age difference, some critics suggest Anne was the origin of Shakespeare's particular interest in female characters who are older and more experienced than the usual female romantic lead. Many of Shakespeare's most complex characters are wives and mothers. In Gertrude from Hamlet and Cleopatra from Antony and Cleopatra, he showed deep sympathy for the sexuality of women no longer in their youth. In other plays, he explored how the ambition of a wife, like Lady Macbeth, or of a mother like Volumnia from Coriolanus, can shape the course of a husband's or a child's life. We know little about Shakespeare's life between his marriage and 1592, when he turns up in London writing his first plays. At the time, theater was a disreputable pursuit. Actors and writers were part of a London underground teeming with taverns and brothels. Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2, written between 1597 and 1598, perfectly capture the grit and fun of this time and place. So well, in fact, that many believe that Shakespeare, with his family in Stratford, must have felt free to indulge in the seedy London underworld. Between 1593 and 1595, he wrote 3 comedies in which young men go to enormous and sometimes troubling lengths to secure the women they have chosen as partners: The Taming of the Shrew, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and Love's Labour's Lost. He also wrote the incomparable love story, Romeo and Juliet, during this period. Based on indications from his sonnets and the intense male friendships in plays like The Merchant of Venice and Twelfth Night, some believe that Shakespeare pursued men at this time as well. While the lack of direct evidence has done little to stem speculation about Shakespeare partying in 1590s London, his impressive writing output during the decade strongly suggests that, whatever else he was doing, he was also dedicated to his craft and to achieving status and material rewards. Starting in 1594, Shakespeare began to write exclusively for a new company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, in which he was a shareholder. They quickly became London's most popular theater company, and in 1599 they built their own theater, the Globe. Later in 1599, Shakespeare wrote Henry V, which picks up the story of fun-loving Prince Hal, who spent Henry IV Parts 1 and 2 lounging in taverns. But now Hal is the king, and he's beginning to feel the weight of his responsibilities. The author of Henry V was changing as well. By this point, Shakespeare was rich and famous, and he'd bought a mansion in Stratford. Around about 1599, Shakespeare's writing focus changed significantly. He shifted away from histories and comedies and towards tragedies like Hamlet, King Lear, and Macbeth. No one knows why this shift occurred, but he may have been influenced by the death of his son, Hamnet, and perhaps by the death of his father, particularly since grief and loss emerge as major themes in his plays. Hamlet dwells on a son's grief for his father. King Lear culminates in Lear's ferocious, half-mad anguish for his dead daughter. Macbeth hinges on the murder of another character's children. Shakespeare continued to write comedies as well, but they are colored by grief. In Twelfth Night, a twin sister mourns her brother. Measure for Measure is about a woman's attempts to save her brother's life. The tone of other comedies written after 1600 is so bleak that some question if they are really comedies. In 1608, Shakespeare became a grandfather. This experience may have been as affecting as the earlier loss of his son, because his writing changes again around this time. Between 1608 and 1612, Shakespeare wrote Pericles, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, and The Tempest. 4 plays about powerful, weary old men whose suffering and bad behavior is redeemed by their loving daughters. In these final plays, magic is possible. Wonderful and unexpected things happen to the characters who least deserve it. The Tempest is often seen as Shakespeare's farewell to the stage. In the epilogue that ends the play, Prospero, the main character, turns to the audience and renounces his magical powers. He asks forgiveness for any harm he has done and says, "As you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free." Shakespeare retired from writing in 1613. Around then, he also moved back to Stratford, where he died in 1616 at the age of 52. Shakespeare is credited writing 37 plays, including numerous works that are revered to this day. A number of those plays seem to have transcended even the category of brilliance, becoming so influential as to profoundly affect the course of Western literature and culture even after.